Thank you for that kind introduction, and welcome everyone to this satellite video conference and webcast produced by the International Training Center of San Diego, California. For the last 10 years or so, I have been trying to understand the forces that are creating the new world of business. Too often I find myself saying in reaction to what is happening, I just don't get it. What's going on and why? This is not the way things used to be, nor is it the way things are supposed to be. That is, I've been trying to figure out what is happening, why it is happening, and what can organizations and their leaders do about it. Clearly, as mentioned in the introduction, the following situations are all creating not only new challenges, but a complexity beyond anything experienced before. The rapid advance of globalization and the increasing integration of new markets. The ongoing revolutions in technology and communication capabilities. And the population impacts of a series of things. For example, of the large number of new consumers from China, India, Russia, Brazil, Mexico, of the large numbers of new members of the global labor force. For example, huge numbers of technologically skilled young people from developed and some from emerging economies, and huge numbers of unskilled young people in still developing economies. And of course, of the rapid growth of older populations around the world. Today, I will focus on ideas about how organizations are learning to deal with this all-encompassing chaos and complexity that is the result of these situations. First, let me illustrate how some well-known executives think about these situations. For example, Paul Allaire, the former CEO of Xerox, says we're in a brawl with no rules. That is, everyone is in a fight for survival with no guides for how to act. Steve Case, co-founder of AOL, says there will be more confusion in the business world in the next decade than in any decade in history. It's confusing because of the pace and all-encompassing nature of change, and because of having to confront so many new ways of working in all areas of business. Jack Welch, the well-known former CEO of General Electric, says when the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, then the end for the organization is in sight. I would suggest that this is the situation being faced by pretty much everybody and every organization. Thus, this situation is one of survival for every organization, every manager, and every worker. Those organizations and leaders that do not pay attention and thus don't figure out how to adapt will not last very long. And lastly, let me quote Sam Palmisano, who's CEO of IBM, who wrote in the introduction to one of IBM's recent reports on their global surveys of the challenges being faced by over 20,000 top executives from around the world. Quote, the world's private and public sector leaders believe that a rapid escalation of complexity is the biggest challenge confronting them, and they expect it to continue, indeed to accelerate, in the coming years, unquote. In the most recent of these reports, CEO Palmisano summarized the consequences of this complexity in this way. First, these top executives are collectively clear that their enterprises today are not equipped to cope effectively with this complexity in the global environment. And secondly, these executives feel that this lack of capability to cope with this environment is largely because they don't have the single most important competency, which they view to be creativity, which they need to negotiate a successful path through this complexity. These executives felt that neither they, nor their employees, nor their corporate cultures are ready to deliver the necessary innovation and creativity. This new world is constantly throwing new ideas, new technologies, new company and new country competitors, new customers, new regulations, new global financial challenges, and new types of employees at us and our organizations. As Jack Welch said, the biggest challenge is for us as leaders and for our organizations to be able to change faster than all of these challenges force us to change. If we wait until we are forced to change, it is too long. The head of Sony Corporation's supply chain for Asia told me that the only way they could stay ahead of their competitors was to innovate faster than other people could copy what they were doing. Many executives and consultants claim that organizations and their leaders need to possess these following traits in order to cope with this new world. They need flexibility, adaptability, resilience, and recoverability. These are similar ideas, but they are not the same. They are slightly different. Yet all four traits are important and necessary to stay ahead of today's challenges. Here's a quick overview of what they mean and how they are different from each other. Flexibility. This means to have available a variety of methods and technologies for dealing with change. Adaptability. This refers to the willingness to try different methods and technologies in order to cope. Resilience is the ability to not get upset or bothered by experiencing failure when trying new methods or technologies, or when having to constantly confront new competitors. And recoverability, which refers to the ability to spring back from surprises and bad experiences and move on quickly to renewed high performance. In order to have any type of competitive advantage today, organizations must develop and nurture an organizational culture that swears by this value. We are the best there is, but there is nothing we can't do better. Let me repeat that. We are the best there is, but there is nothing we can't do better. It is not enough to be good and realize you're good, that is, to have the best products or operational methods. There is always someone who will copy your efforts with their own innovations to be better, or who will build on your products and services with totally new products and services that will dazzle your customers in totally new ways and thus take them away from you. Without an attitude by managers and employees that says you can and will constantly improve, you will not constantly change and innovate in ways needed to stay in front of your markets and competitors. That is, the key is to build organizational capabilities and attitudes that allow a firm and its employees to create the capacity for continuous improvement and innovation. So how can you create the innovative behaviors you need, particularly when employees are bored, tired, overworked, or distracted? C.K. Prahlad, in his recent book on the New Age of Innovation, points out that value creation from innovation will be increasingly co-created with individual consumers. No single firm or employee has all the knowledge, skills, or resources it needs to co-create value with customers. So firms have to learn how to match individual talented employees with individual customers in ways that allow consumers to create their own products and services. This requires the flexibility, adaptability, resilience, and recoverability mentioned before in the whole organization and in each individual within it. Everyone will need to place learning as a first priority, along with the flexibility to use their existing or newly learned skills and knowledge in whatever way is needed to serve the identified needs of the customer. In an interesting example of the power of globalization and the spread of technology, I purchased this Prahlad book last year in a bookstore in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, for $3, where I was visiting as a tourist in this only recently opened country. Innovative technology and new methods for managing learning and knowledge in our organizations will enable employees to co-create constantly new value for the customer. This needs to be our focus as leaders of organizations, and the rest of my presentation will build on this focus. Tom Peters, one of my favorite management gurus, presented a series of attributes of excellence in his groundbreaking study published a number of years ago. They still provide core ideas for building an organization that is focused on partnering for innovative value with customers. These attributes included the following. First, a bias for action. Peters found that excellent firms did not spend all their time studying problems forever, but were more inclined to just try things. It was in these trials that these firms constantly found improvement and innovation. Secondly, excellent firms stayed close to their customers. I think we all recognize great customer service, putting the customer first when we see or experience it. And yet many organizations and their employees still don't seem to get it right. There has to be a passion for making customers satisfied, and all employees have to be empowered to do whatever is needed to keep them that way. Given all the attention to customer service since the publication of Tom Peters' book on organizational excellence, it is always amazing to me when I observe or receive bad treatment as a customer. Excellent firms are also ones that break themselves into small units and encourage internal competition, independence, and entrepreneurship. They minimize the numbers of middle and upper managers in order to streamline decision-making and to empower customer contact employees to take care of their customers. Such firms recognize that the best efforts of their people are the keys to their success. The activity that makes all of this work is constant learning by both the total organization and by every individual within it. In order to constantly improve, the organization and its members need to master these 4 stages of learning. The effective creation of new ideas, the capture of both new and old ideas and practices, particularly turning tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge so others can learn from the knowledge and experience of experts. The storage of these ideas and practices so everyone can access this knowledge and experience. The access to and sharing of this information, experience, and knowledge. And the use of this information, experience, and knowledge in order to be able to innovate new ways to serve the needs of customers. What the successful companies find, and as reported by Fast Company magazine in its recent edition, devoted to the most creative people in business, is that creativity is unpredictable and disruptive. The quest for new ideas can inspire fear in both the creator and in everybody else who has to change in order to implement the innovations. There will be fear about whether the idea is the right one, whether executing it is possible, and whether the costs of change will swamp its benefits. Ultimately, Fast Company and others have found the following lessons. First, that creativity can come from anywhere. Second, that creativity can solve problems that seem insurmountable. Third, that there is a limitless supply of creativity. And fourth, that creativity often implies not just invention, but reinvention. The challenge for leaders is to figure out how to create an organization that lives and breathes the values of creativity and innovation. Indeed, organizations and individuals need to have answers to the question, what have you done in the last year to improve yourself? Or, what has the organization or its leaders done in the last year to improve itself or themselves. To merely understand that you or your organization have learned from experience is not enough. One can learn, as mentioned above, from reflection on one's personal experience. But one can also learn indirectly from others' experience, if they can turn their tacit knowledge into suitable explicit knowledge, or indirectly from sources like books, movies, or online postings, such as YouTube or other social collaborations. In this module, I have introduced some of the basics of these values. In another module, I will be more specific about the forms of innovation and what it takes to implement them.
Thank you for your presentation, and now let's go to Module 2 of this program.